Cleaning supervisor Maria Rodriguez quietly entered the Platinum VIP suite at Manhattan Memorial Hospital, knowing she had to complete her work quickly before the notorious patient woke up. Real estate mogul Richard Sterling had been terrorizing staff for days from his luxury suite, making outrageous demands and treating hospital workers like personal servants. Perfect timing. Richard's voice cut through the silence as Maria began her cleaning routine. "I've been waiting for one of you people to show up so I can demonstrate something important to my business associates." He gestured to his laptop, where a live video call was in progress with his company's board members. "Watch this. This is exactly the kind of inferior help that's destroying our society." What Richard didn't realize was that the hospital's advanced security system was broadcasting everything live to the administration office, where Dr. Sarah Chen was recording every word of his discriminatory rant that was about to destroy his empire. If this story resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. The Platinum VIP suite at Manhattan Memorial Hospital represented the pinnacle of luxury medical care, occupying the entire 47th floor of the hospital's newest wing. The 3,000-square-foot space featured imported Italian marble floors that cost more than most people's houses, custom crystal chandeliers from Venice worth $500,000 each, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Central Park, a private chef's kitchen staffed by culinary graduates from Le Cordon Bleu, conference facilities equipped with military-grade encryption technology, and accommodations that surpassed the most exclusive five-star hotels worldwide. The suite had been designed by the same architectural firm that created luxury residences for European royalty and tech billionaires, with every detail crafted to communicate absolute power and unlimited privilege. The main living area featured Persian rugs worth more than most people's annual salaries, furniture handcrafted by Italian artisans, and original artwork by contemporary masters including pieces by Banksy, Kors, and Damien Hirst that Richard had personally selected from his private collection. Richard Sterling had reserved the exclusive suite for what he claimed was a routine cardiac procedure, though hospital staff suspected his extended 2-week stay was more about enjoying the luxury amenities while conducting business than actual medical necessity. At 62 years old, Richard controlled a real estate empire worth $8 billion, with properties in Manhattan, London, Tokyo, and Dubai that generated millions in daily revenue while employing thousands of workers whom he considered expendable resources. The suite itself was designed to cater to ultra-wealthy patients who demanded complete control over their environment during medical treatment. The master bedroom featured a hospital bed disguised as premium furniture, with medical monitoring equipment hidden behind custom cabinetry that maintained the illusion of a luxury hotel rather than a medical facility. The bed linens were Egyptian cotton, with thread counts that exceeded anything available to ordinary consumers, while the pillows were stuffed with rare goose down that cost $3,000 per pillow. Adjacent to the bedroom was a private office equipped with secure satellite communication systems that allowed Richard to conduct sensitive business negotiations without risk of corporate espionage or regulatory oversight. The office featured a conference table made from 1,000-year-old redwood, leather chairs that cost $50,000 each, and computer systems with processing power that exceeded most university research facilities. The suite's private dining area could accommodate 12 guests for business meals prepared by executive chefs who had worked at Michelin-starred restaurants in Paris, New York, and Tokyo. The kitchen was equipped with professional-grade appliances, wine storage systems maintaining perfect climate control, and ingredients flown in daily from suppliers around the world who catered exclusively to ultra-wealthy clients. Richard's presence had transformed the medical facility into his personal kingdom, where he expected staff to function as servants rather than healthcare professionals. His entourage included 3 personal assistants who managed his schedule and communications, 4 security personnel who monitored access and communications, 2 legal advisors who provided real-time consultation on business decisions, and a personal physician who had been recruited from his private medical practice to oversee his hospital care. The luxury appointments extended to every aspect of the suite, including marble bathrooms with gold fixtures, a private spa area with massage tables and treatment rooms, a fitness center equipped with personal training equipment, and entertainment systems that provided access to exclusive content and live streaming from his various business operations around the world. But beneath the veneer of medical necessity and luxury accommodation, Richard had created an environment where he systematically abused his power over hospital staff who couldn't afford to resist his demands or report his inappropriate behavior without risking their employment and financial security. His treatment of service workers had become a form of entertainment that he shared with business associates as demonstrations of his power and control. Maria Rodriguez had worked as a cleaning supervisor at Manhattan Memorial Hospital for 15 years, building a reputation for professionalism, attention to detail, and compassionate treatment of both patients and colleagues. At 48 years old, she supported her elderly mother, Rosa, who suffered from diabetes and required expensive medications, and 2 teenage daughters. Isabella, 17, who was valedictorian of her high school class and planned to attend Columbia University on academic scholarships, and Carmen, 15, who excelled in mathematics and dreamed of becoming a biomedical engineer. Maria's cleaning responsibilities included the most prestigious areas of the hospital, where attention to detail was critical for maintaining the institution's reputation among wealthy patients and donors who expected perfection in every aspect of their medical experience. Her work ethic was legendary among hospital staff, often staying late to ensure that patient rooms met the highest standards of cleanliness and comfort, while mentoring newer employees about professional standards and patient care excellence. Her personal story was one of resilience and determination that had overcome significant challenges throughout her adult life. Maria had immigrated to the United States from El Salvador at age 22, fleeing civil war violence that had claimed the lives of several family members and destroyed the small business her parents had built over decades of hard work. She had arrived in New York with limited English skills, no professional contacts, and only the clothes she could carry while crossing multiple borders to reach safety. The early years in America had been extremely difficult, working multiple jobs while attending English classes at night and supporting family members who had also fled to the United States. Maria had cleaned offices during night shifts, worked in restaurant kitchens during weekend rushes, and provided childcare for working mothers who needed reliable, affordable assistance while building their own American dreams. Her position at Manhattan Memorial Hospital represented the culmination of years of professional development and educational advancement. Maria had earned her high school equivalency diploma while working full-time, completed community college courses in healthcare administration and environmental services management, and obtained professional certifications in hospital cleaning protocols and infection control that demonstrated her expertise and commitment to excellence. The hospital's housekeeping department recognized Maria as one of their most valuable employees, frequently consulting with her about protocol improvements and staff training programs. Her bilingual skills made her invaluable for communicating with diverse patient populations and staff members, while her cultural competence helped create welcoming environments for patients from various backgrounds who might feel intimidated by medical settings. But Richard Sterling represented a unique challenge that tested Maria's professionalism and personal resilience in ways that 15 years of hospital experience had not prepared her for. From his first day in the VIP suite, he had treated cleaning staff like personal property, making demeaning comments about their intelligence, work ethic, and social status, while demanding services that went far beyond normal housekeeping responsibilities. "These people need to understand their place in the world," Richard had told his business associates during his first week, gesturing dismissively toward Maria and other cleaning staff, while conducting video conferences that treated hospital employees as entertainment for his professional network. "They're here to serve their betters, not to think or have opinions about anything important." His comments reflected a worldview that divided humanity into rigid hierarchies based on wealth and perceived social status, with service workers occupying the lowest rungs of a ladder that Richard believed he had climbed through superior intelligence and capability rather than inherited advantages and systemic privileges that had shaped his entire life trajectory. Richard's treatment of hospital staff had become increasingly abusive as he tested the limits of what his wealth and influence would allow him to get away with in a medical setting. He had demanded that cleaning staff work on their hands and knees while he watched and critiqued their technique, forced them to clean already spotless surfaces multiple times while he timed their performance, and made degrading comments about their appearance, personal hygiene, and family circumstances that he seemed to research specifically to maximize humiliation. The hospital's housekeeping staff had begun requesting schedule changes to avoid working in Richard's suite, with several experienced employees considering resignation rather than continuing to endure his systematic abuse and degrading treatment. Turnover in the housekeeping department had increased dramatically since Richard's arrival, creating staffing challenges and additional workload for remaining employees who couldn't afford to quit their positions. Maria had volunteered to handle Richard's care personally rather than subject her team members to his humiliating treatment and inappropriate demands. Her decision was motivated by protective instincts for younger, less experienced staff members who might be more vulnerable to his manipulation and intimidation tactics, as well as her own financial need to maintain steady employment regardless of difficult working conditions. Dr. Sarah Chen, Manhattan Memorial's chief administrator, had been receiving complaints about Richard's behavior, but faced pressure from the hospital board to accommodate his demands due to the substantial revenue his extended stay generated. The VIP suite cost $15,000 per night, and Richard's presence attracted other wealthy patients who assumed the hospital's tolerance of his behavior indicated exceptional customer service and accommodation of elite preferences. Dr. Chen had earned her medical degree from Johns Hopkins University and completed healthcare administration training at Harvard Business School, building her career on principles of patient care excellence and employee protection that sometimes conflicted with financial pressures from hospital boards focused on revenue generation and competitive positioning. Her leadership philosophy emphasized creating environments where medical professionals could provide excellent care while maintaining their dignity and professional satisfaction. The tension between accommodating wealthy patients and protecting staff members created ethical dilemmas that Dr. Chen navigated carefully, seeking solutions that balanced financial sustainability with moral obligations to employees who depended on their hospital positions for livelihood and professional fulfillment. Richard's case represented an extreme example of these challenges, testing her ability to maintain institutional integrity while managing board pressure for revenue protection. Dr. Chen was increasingly concerned about the legal and ethical implications of allowing Richard's abuse to continue unchecked. Hospital employees had fundamental rights to safe working conditions free from harassment and discrimination, and the institution could face significant liability if staff members filed complaints or lawsuits about hostile working conditions that administration had failed to address appropriately. Employment law had evolved significantly in recent years to provide stronger protections for service workers who faced harassment from wealthy customers or patients. creating legal frameworks that held both individuals and institutions accountable for creating or tolerating discriminatory working environments. Dr. Chen understood that her hospital's tolerance of Richard's behavior could create legal exposure that far exceeded any revenue benefits from his extended stay. The hospital's recently installed security system represented state-of-the-art surveillance technology designed to protect both patients and staff while ensuring accountability for behavior that might create legal or ethical problems. The high-definition cameras and audio recording equipment captured every interaction in patient rooms, with real-time monitoring capabilities that allowed security personnel and administrators to observe concerning situations as they developed and intervene before serious incidents occurred. The security system had been implemented following several incidents involving patient abuse allegations and regulatory requirements for enhanced monitoring of patient care quality and staff safety. The technology provided comprehensive documentation that could be used for staff training, quality improvement, legal compliance, and protection against false allegations from patients or family members who might dispute care quality or professional conduct. Marcus Thompson, the hospital's head of security, had been specifically instructed to monitor Richard's interactions with staff members after receiving reports about his inappropriate behavior and demands. Marcus brought 20 years of law enforcement experience to his hospital position, including specialized training in domestic violence, workplace harassment, and discrimination cases that had prepared him to recognize patterns of abusive behavior and document evidence for legal proceedings. The security system's advanced capabilities included facial recognition technology that could track individuals throughout hospital facilities, voice analysis software that could identify stress patterns and threatening language, and automatic flagging of interactions that might indicate harassment, abuse, or other concerning behaviors that required immediate intervention or documentation. The live monitoring feeds were accessible to hospital administrators, legal counsel, and security personnel who could intervene immediately when dangerous or inappropriate situations developed. The recorded footage was automatically preserved for legal compliance and could be used as evidence in disciplinary actions, criminal investigations, or civil litigation that might result from patient or staff behavior. What Richard didn't understand was that his assumed privacy in the VIP suite was actually an illusion created by luxury amenities that masked comprehensive surveillance designed to protect the hospital from liability and ensure accountability for patient behavior that might harm staff members or violate professional standards and legal requirements. The suite's sophisticated technology systems included multiple hidden cameras positioned to capture every angle of the living space, with audio recording capabilities sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations and document threatening or discriminatory language that might create legal problems for the institution or evidence for criminal prosecution. Dr. Chen had been reviewing recorded footage from Richard's previous interactions with staff, documenting patterns of abusive behavior that would support disciplinary action or legal intervention if his conduct escalated to levels that endangered staff safety or violated anti-discrimination laws. The documentation revealed systematic harassment that had been developing over several days, creating a clear pattern of abusive behavior rather than isolated incidents or misunderstandings. On this particular Tuesday morning, Richard was conducting a video conference with his company's board of directors, discussing acquisition strategies and personnel policies that reflected his hierarchical worldview about human worth and social organization. The business meeting was taking place in the suite's conference area with high-definition video links to boardrooms in New York, Los Angeles, London, and Dubai, where his various business entities maintained headquarters and regional offices. Gentlemen, what we're dealing with is a crisis of expectations in the service industry, Richard was explaining to his board members while reviewing financial projections on multiple computer screens that displayed real estate portfolios, market analysis, and acquisition targets across 3 continents. These people have forgotten their proper role in society, and it's our responsibility as leaders to remind them where they belong in the natural order of business relationships. Nizade, the conversation reflected Richard's belief that wealth naturally created authority over other people's lives and behavior, and that service workers needed constant reminders of their subordinate status to maintain proper social order and business efficiency. His business philosophy was rooted in social Darwinism that attributed his success to superior intelligence and capability rather than inherited advantages and systemic privileges that had shaped his opportunities. The board members participating in the video conference represented the global elite of real estate investment and development, including William Foster from the New York headquarters, Patricia Williams from the Los Angeles Luxury Development Division, James Chen from the London International Operations Center, and Abdullah Rahman from the Dubai Middle East Expansion Office. Each had built their careers on similar philosophies about social hierarchy and worker management that reinforced Richard's worldview. Richard, we're seeing similar challenges in our international operations, contributed James Chen from London, where Sterling Global Properties had been acquiring historic buildings and converting them into luxury accommodations for ultra-wealthy residents. The service staff in our London properties need constant reminders about appropriate deference and service standards that meet our clientele's expectations. The conversation revealed a corporate culture that systematically devalued service workers while expecting them to provide exceptional performance for minimal compensation and no job security. The board members shared strategies for maintaining worker compliance through intimidation, economic pressure, and systematic undermining of employee confidence and professional dignity. Maria had entered the suite during the early morning hours when Richard was typically asleep, hoping to complete her cleaning responsibilities without triggering his abusive behavior or demands for degrading personal service. Her approach was based on months of experience managing his unpredictable moods and explosive reactions to perceived challenges to his authority or control over hospital staff. The timing was perfect for Richard's purposes. He had a live audience of business associates who shared his worldview about social hierarchy, and he had access to a hospital employee who couldn't afford to resist or report his abuse without risking her employment and financial security. The video conference provided an opportunity to demonstrate his power while entertaining colleagues who appreciated displays of dominance over service workers. Perfect timing, Richard announced loudly as Maria began her routine cleaning procedures, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who had been waiting for an opportunity to demonstrate his authority and control. "I've been waiting for one of you people to show up so I can demonstrate something important to my business associates about proper employee management and service industry leadership." His reference to "you people" was deliberately derogatory, designed to establish Maria's subordinate status while reinforcing his own superiority in front of the board members who were watching the interaction through their video conference connection from luxury boardrooms around the world. "Gentlemen, observe carefully," Richard continued, while gesturing toward Maria with obvious contempt and theatrical exaggeration. "This is exactly the kind of inferior help that's destroying our society and undermining proper business relationships. These people have no work ethic, no pride in their appearance, no understanding of proper respect for their betters, and no appreciation for the opportunities they've been given to serve successful enterprises." Oyu. The comments were designed to humiliate Maria while entertaining his business associates, demonstrating his belief that service workers existed primarily for the amusement and convenience of wealthy employers who had the right to critique and control their behavior for personal satisfaction and professional networking purposes. Maria maintained her professional composure despite Richard's obvious attempt to provoke a reaction that he could use to justify further abuse or demands for degrading behavior that would entertain his global business network. Her 15 years of experience had taught her that responding to abusive patients often escalated situations and created additional problems for hospital staff who lacked power to defend themselves against wealthy patients or institutional pressure to accommodate revenue-generating clients. "Look at how she moves," Richard continued his commentary for the board members, his voice taking on the tone of a nature documentary narrator describing animal behavior. No sense of urgency, no attention to detail, no understanding that her job performance reflects on the institution that employs her. This is what happens when people don't understand their proper place in the economic hierarchy. The running commentary was designed to turn Maria's professional work into entertainment for his business associates while demonstrating his perceived authority to critique and control the behavior of anyone he considered socially or economically inferior. His confidence suggested that he had performed similar displays for business colleagues in other contexts, using service workers as props for demonstrating power and control. But what neither Richard nor Maria realized was that every word of his discriminatory rant was being broadcast live through the hospital's security system to Dr. Chen's administrative office, where the chief administrator was recording evidence that would soon expose Richard to consequences he had never anticipated facing, despite decades of abusing service workers in luxury hotels, restaurants, and business facilities. The advanced surveillance technology was capturing not just his abusive language, but also the deliberate nature of his harassment and his explicit intention to demonstrate power over service workers for the entertainment of his business associates. The recorded evidence would provide clear documentation of discrimination and harassment that violated hospital policies and potentially state and federal employment laws that protected service workers from exactly this type of systematic abuse. Dr. Chen watched the live feed with growing outrage and determination to protect her staff from further abuse, while ensuring that Richard faced appropriate consequences for behavior that had created a hostile working environment and violated basic standards of human dignity and professional conduct that the hospital was legally and morally obligated to maintain. "This is absolutely unacceptable," Dr. Chen said to Marcus Thompson while they monitored Richard's behavior through the high-definition security feed that was preserving every detail of his discriminatory conduct. "We have clear evidence of systematic harassment that violates multiple employment protection laws, and we need to intervene immediately to protect Maria and document this behavior for legal action." Marcus activated the hospital's emergency response protocols, while Dr. Chen contacted legal counsel and human resources personnel to coordinate immediate intervention and evidence preservation that would support both criminal charges and civil litigation against Richard for his systematic abuse of hospital staff. As Richard's commentary continued, his behavior escalated beyond inappropriate remarks to explicit demands for humiliating performance that would demonstrate his power over hospital staff to his international business network and provide entertainment for colleagues who shared his views about service worker management and social control. "Maria, isn't it?" Richard said while reading her name tag with obvious condescension and theatrical emphasis. "I want you to show these gentlemen what proper service looks like in a premium healthcare facility. Get on your hands and knees and clean this floor properly, the way service workers should approach their duties. Show some pride in your work for once in your life." The demand was designed to force Maria into a degrading position while his board members watched through the video conference, creating a spectacle that would reinforce his authority and provide entertainment for business associates who viewed such displays as appropriate demonstrations of management authority and social hierarchy. The international audience added another layer of humiliation to Richard's demand, as he was essentially commanding Maria to perform degrading behavior for the entertainment of wealthy executives in multiple countries who would witness her submission to his authority and control. Maria recognized that complying with Richard's demand would validate his abusive behavior and encourage further escalation. But refusing could result in complaints to hospital administration that might threaten her employment and ability to support her family's medical expenses and educational goals that depended entirely on her steady income and health insurance benefits. "Mr. Sterling, the floor is already clean according to hospital standards and infection control protocols," Maria replied professionally, while continuing her normal cleaning routine that followed established procedures for maintaining medical environments. "I'm here to maintain the medical environment according to established protocols and professional cleaning standards." Her response was measured and professional, avoiding confrontation while establishing that she wouldn't participate in degrading performances designed to entertain Richard's business associates or validate his belief that service workers existed for his amusement and the entertainment of his professional network. But Richard interpreted Maria's professional boundaries as defiance that needed to be crushed publicly to maintain his authority and demonstrate to his international board members that he could control any employee through sufficient pressure and intimidation tactics that had worked successfully in other business contexts. "Listen carefully, Maria," Richard said with obvious menace, while his board members watched through the video link from their luxurious offices around the world. "I pay more for this room than you make in a year, probably more than your entire family makes in several years. That means you do exactly what I tell you to do, exactly how I tell you to do it, without question or hesitation. Now get on your knees and show proper respect for the people who pay your salary and provide your livelihood." The explicit threat was designed to force compliance through economic intimidation while providing his board members with a demonstration of how wealth could be used to control and humiliate service workers who lacked financial power to resist inappropriate demands or report abusive behavior without risking their economic survival. The international business network, watching Richard's performance, represented billions in combined wealth and influence, creating an audience that amplified the power dynamics and made Maria's resistance even more significant as a challenge to systematic abuse that extended across global business operations and luxury service industries. As Richard's demands became increasingly explicit and humiliating, the video conference audience provided encouragement and suggestions that revealed the systematic nature of service worker abuse within their global business network. The board members began sharing their own stories and techniques for maintaining control over employees and service providers who served their various luxury properties and business operations. "Richard, that's exactly the kind of leadership that's needed in today's service environment," commented William Foster from New York, his voice carrying obvious approval for the degrading display. "These people need constant reminders about their place in the economic hierarchy, or they start getting ideas above their station that undermine business efficiency and proper service standards." The encouragement from his business associates emboldened Richard to escalate his demands and make his threats more explicit, while demonstrating advanced techniques for humiliating service workers that he had apparently perfected through years of practice in luxury hotels, restaurants, and business facilities around the world. "You see, gentlemen, the key is establishing dominance immediately and maintaining it through consistent pressure," Richard explained to his international audience, while Maria continued her professional cleaning duties despite the escalating harassment. Service workers respond to authority and economic pressure, but you have to be willing to follow through on threats, or they'll test your resolve and undermine your control. His commentary revealed sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation and economic coercion that suggested extensive experience exploiting power imbalances to control vulnerable workers who depended on service industry employment for their survival and couldn't afford to resist wealthy customers who held economic power over their employment prospects. Maria, I'm going to give you one more opportunity to demonstrate proper respect and service attitude, Richard announced, while his board members leaned forward in their video screens to observe the confrontation. Get on your hands and knees and clean this floor the way it should be cleaned, or I'll make sure that you and your family understand what happens to people who don't appreciate the opportunities they've been given to serve their betters. The threat extended beyond Maria's employment to include her family members, demonstrating Richard's willingness to use economic warfare against entire households to maintain control over individual workers who challenged his authority or refused to participate in degrading performances for his entertainment. Maria understood that Richard's threats weren't idle. His wealth and connections provided him with power to damage her employment prospects throughout the healthcare industry, and potentially affect her daughter's educational opportunities if he chose to pursue vindictive retaliation against her family for her professional resistance to his demands. But Maria's response demonstrated the dignity and courage that had characterized her 15-year career at Manhattan Memorial Hospital, refusing to be intimidated by threats or degraded by demands that violated basic standards of human respect and workplace safety. Mr. Sterling, I'm here to provide professional cleaning services according to hospital standards and infection control protocols, Maria replied with calm authority while continuing her established cleaning procedures. If you have concerns about my work quality or performance standards, please discuss them with hospital administration through appropriate channels rather than making inappropriate demands. Her response redirected Richard's abuse toward proper administrative procedures while maintaining her professional boundaries and refusing to participate in the degrading spectacle that he had created for his international business associates who were watching from multiple luxury offices around the world. Richard's frustration with Maria's professional resistance prompted him to make explicit threats about her employment and financial security, demonstrating the calculated nature of his abuse and his understanding that economic vulnerability made service workers susceptible to exploitation and humiliation that wealthy customers could impose without fear of consequences. You're making a serious mistake, Maria, Richard said with obvious satisfaction at having an international audience for his demonstration of economic power and social control. I have connections throughout this hospital system and the broader healthcare industry, as well as political influence and business relationships that extend far beyond your comprehension. Service workers who don't show proper respect and deference tend to find themselves unemployed and unemployable throughout entire industries. Are you sure you want to risk your family's financial security and your daughter's future opportunities over false pride and misguided defiance? The threat was designed to force compliance through fear while providing his board members with evidence of how economic leverage could be used to control employee behavior and maintain social hierarchies that benefited wealthy employers and their business networks. But Richard's explicit threats and discriminatory language were providing Dr. Chen and the hospital's legal team with clear evidence of behavior that violated multiple employment laws and created liability that extended beyond his personal conduct to include his business entities and professional relationships that could face regulatory scrutiny and legal action. The video conference was also creating evidence that Richard's abusive behavior was part of a systematic pattern shared by his business associates, potentially exposing his entire corporate network to investigations for discriminatory employment practices and hostile workplace environments that affected workers throughout their global operations. At that moment, security officers Marcus Thompson and Detective Sarah Davis entered the VIP suite with authority to protect hospital staff and address the harassment incident that had been escalating throughout the morning while being witnessed by an international audience of business executives. "Mr. Sterling, we need to discuss your treatment of hospital staff immediately," Marcus announced, while positioning himself between Richard and Maria to prevent further intimidation or threatening behavior that might escalate to physical violence or additional criminal conduct. Richard's initial reaction revealed his shock at facing consequences for behavior that had previously been tolerated or ignored by service industries that prioritized his revenue over staff protection and workplace safety. His confidence had been built on decades of successfully abusing service workers without accountability or legal intervention. "This is a private medical suite, and you have no authority to interfere with my business meetings or my interactions with hospital employees who are paid to serve patients," Richard declared with arrogance that ignored the reality of his abusive behavior and the hospital's legal obligation to protect staff from harassment and discrimination. Detective Davis, who had been called by Dr. Chen to address potential criminal charges for workplace harassment and threats, immediately recognized that Richard's behavior constituted clear violations of employment protection laws and anti-discrimination statutes that required immediate intervention and criminal investigation. "Mr. Sterling, your threats and harassment of hospital staff constitute criminal behavior that we're investigating for potential charges including workplace harassment, intimidation, and creation of a hostile working environment," Detective Davis announced, while preparing to document his conduct for prosecution. "You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly advise you to exercise that right while we preserve evidence and interview witnesses." The arrival of law enforcement created immediate panic among Richard's board members, who realized that their video conference had provided them with front-row seats to witness criminal behavior that could create legal liability for their business entities and personal reputations if they were identified as witnesses to or participants in systematic workplace harassment. "Richard, end this call immediately and contact your attorneys," advised Board Chairman William Foster from the New York office, his voice carrying urgency as he realized the legal implications of witnessing and encouraging criminal behavior. "We're disconnecting from this conference and distancing the company from whatever legal problems you've created through your personal conduct." And the board members' immediate abandonment revealed that Richard's assumed support network would disappear rapidly when his behavior created legal and reputational risks for business associates who had previously tolerated or encouraged his abusive treatment of service workers but couldn't afford to be associated with criminal conduct. "Wait, you can't just disconnect," Richard protested as his board members began ending their video conference participation. "This is just a misunderstanding with hospital staff. We were conducting legitimate business discussions about employee management and service industry standards. But the board members understood that law enforcement intervention and criminal investigation created exposure that could affect their business licenses, regulatory compliance, and international operations if they were identified as participants in or witnesses to discriminatory conduct and workplace harassment." As the video conference participants disconnected one by one, Richard found himself isolated and facing criminal charges without the business network support that had previously validated and encouraged his abusive behavior towards service workers and employees throughout his business empire. The comprehensive security recordings had captured not only Richard's abusive behavior, but also the encouragement and participation of his international business associates, creating evidence of systematic discrimination that could trigger investigations into their global operations and employment practices. Dr. Chen and the hospital's legal team understood that the recorded evidence provided unprecedented documentation of how wealthy business networks systematically abused service workers while protecting themselves through economic power and legal influence that had previously prevented accountability for discriminatory conduct. As the legal consequences of his behavior became apparent, Richard attempted to minimize the situation through offers of financial compensation that demonstrated his fundamental misunderstanding of the legal and ethical issues his conduct had created, and his inability to comprehend that money couldn't solve problems created by criminal behavior and systematic discrimination. "This is all a misunderstanding that's being blown out of proportion," Richard protested, while attempting to offer money to Maria and hospital staff. "I was just demonstrating management techniques and service industry standards to my business associates. There's no need for legal action when we can resolve this situation financially through appropriate compensation and confidentiality agreements." But Dr. Chen and the hospital's legal team understood that accepting financial settlements would not address the systematic nature of Richard's abusive behavior or prevent similar incidents with other patients and service workers who deserved protection from harassment and discrimination regardless of the financial resources that wealthy patients might use to avoid accountability. "Mr. Sterling, your behavior has created a hostile working environment and violated multiple employment protection laws, anti-discrimination statutes, and hospital policies that protect staff from harassment and abuse," Dr. Chen announced, while reviewing the documented evidence from security recordings. "Financial compensation doesn't resolve criminal behavior or eliminate our legal and ethical obligation to protect staff from harassment and discrimination." The comprehensive documentation provided by the security system had created indisputable evidence of Richard's discriminatory language, explicit threats, systematic harassment, and international broadcast of abusive behavior that would support criminal charges and civil litigation, regardless of any financial settlements he might offer. Within hours of the incident, news of Richard's abusive behavior began spreading through social media, as hospital staff shared information about his treatment of cleaning workers and the security footage that had documented his discriminatory conduct for an international business audience. The hashtag #JunSterlingExposed began trending nationally and internationally as people expressed outrage about his behavior and called for accountability from his business entities and professional associates who had witnessed or enabled his abusive treatment of service workers through their participation in the video conference. The high-definition security recordings were released as part of public records requests, providing clear documentation of Richard's harassment and threats that contradicted any potential defense claims about misunderstanding or appropriate business conduct. The video evidence showed his systematic manipulation tactics and explicit criminal behavior witnessed by business associates from multiple countries. Technology and business news platforms picked up the story quickly, recognizing that Richard's behavior reflected broader issues within corporate leadership about powerful individuals abusing their positions to exploit service workers who couldn't afford to resist or report inappropriate conduct without risking their economic survival. Real estate mogul caught on camera harassing hospital cleaning staff for international audience became headline news across major media outlets, with the security recordings providing undeniable evidence that exposed Richard's character and business practices to global scrutiny and condemnation. The video evidence showed Richard's systematic manipulation tactics, from economic threats to explicit demands for degrading behavior, demonstrating a calculated pattern of workplace harassment rather than isolated incidents or misunderstandings about appropriate business conduct and professional relationships. Business media coverage focused on the implications for Richard's real estate empire, which faced potential investor withdrawals, tenant boycotts, regulatory investigations, and international scrutiny related to their CEO's discriminatory behavior and apparent pattern of abusing power relationships with service workers throughout their global operations. Stock prices for Richard's publicly traded companies dropped dramatically as investors recognized the reputational damage and potential legal liabilities associated with his personal conduct and its reflection on corporate governance and management practices that enabled or encouraged discriminatory behavior. Board members at Richard's various companies convened emergency meetings to address the crisis and consider leadership changes that would protect shareholder interests and corporate reputation from further damage related to his criminal behavior and legal troubles that could affect international operations and regulatory compliance. The real estate industry's response included statements from professional organizations condemning Richard's behavior while expressing support for service workers who faced similar harassment from wealthy property owners and business leaders who abused their economic power to exploit vulnerable employees and contractors. Professional cleaning and service worker organizations used Richard's case to highlight broader issues of workplace harassment in service industries, advocating for stronger protections and zero-tolerance policies that would prevent similar incidents in other business environments, healthcare facilities, and luxury service providers. Maria's courage in maintaining her professional boundaries and refusing to participate in degrading performances was recognized by labor organizations and worker advocacy groups who praised her dignity and integrity under extremely difficult circumstances that revealed the systematic nature of service worker exploitation. The National Labor Relations Board and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission launched comprehensive investigations into Richard's business practices and potential patterns of discrimination that might affect employees throughout his real estate empire and associated business entities in multiple countries. Legal experts analyzing the security footage and criminal charges noted that the high-definition documentation provided unprecedented evidence of systematic workplace harassment that included international witnesses and would likely result in significant criminal penalties and civil liability for both Richard and his business entities. Richard's criminal defense team faced the overwhelming challenge of defending against charges, supported by crystal-clear video evidence that showed his discriminatory behavior and explicit criminal conduct, witnessed by his own board members through video conference technology that had preserved every detail of his harassment and threats. The lead prosecutor, District Attorney Michelle Rodriguez, recognized that Richard's case represented an opportunity to establish important legal precedents for protecting service workers from wealthy individuals who had traditionally escaped accountability for discriminatory behavior through financial influence and legal manipulation. This case represents everything that's wrong with how wealthy individuals treat service workers, DA Rodriguez announced during the press conference that outlined the criminal charges. The defendant used his wealth and perceived social status to systematically harass and humiliate a hospital employee while broadcasting his abusive behavior to an international audience of business associates who encouraged and validated his discriminatory conduct. The criminal charges included multiple counts of workplace harassment, intimidation, creating a hostile working environment, making terroristic threats, and conspiracy to violate civil rights that carried potential prison sentences totaling up to 15 years if Richard was convicted on all counts. The prosecution's case was strengthened by the comprehensive video and audio evidence that captured every aspect of Richard's behavior, from his initial discriminatory comments to his escalating threats and demands for degrading performance, all witnessed by international business associates who had participated in encouraging his abusive conduct. Richard's defense attorneys, led by prominent criminal defense lawyer Jonathan Pierce, attempted to argue that his behavior constituted inappropriate management techniques rather than criminal conduct. But the video evidence made such defenses extremely difficult to sustain. Our client acknowledges that his management style was inappropriate and insensitive, Pierce explained during preliminary hearings. But criminal charges are excessive for what amounts to a workplace disagreement about service standards and employee performance expectations. But DA Rodriguez countered that the video evidence showed systematic harassment and discrimination that went far beyond workplace management to include explicit threats, demands for degrading behavior, and creation of a hostile working environment that violated multiple criminal statutes designed to protect workers from exactly this type of abuse. The trial proceedings attracted national media attention as the case highlighted broader issues about wealth inequality, service worker exploitation, and the accountability of powerful individuals who had traditionally escaped consequences for discriminatory behavior through financial influence and legal manipulation. Maria's testimony was particularly powerful, as she described not only Richard's specific harassment, but also the broader pattern of abuse that service workers faced from wealthy customers who believed their money entitled them to treat employees as personal property rather than professional human beings deserving of dignity and respect. Mr. Sterling's behavior wasn't just about me, Maria testified during the criminal trial. It was about his belief that wealth gives him the right to humiliate and control anyone he considers beneath his social status. His demands weren't about cleaning standards. They were about demonstrating his power over someone who couldn't fight back without risking her livelihood. The prosecution also called expert witnesses on workplace harassment and discrimination who testified about the psychological impact of Richard's behavior and the systematic nature of service worker abuse in luxury industries where wealthy customers had traditionally faced no accountability for inappropriate conduct. Dr. Patricia Williams, a psychologist specializing in workplace trauma, explained how Richard's behavior created lasting psychological harm that extended beyond the immediate incident to affect Maria's sense of professional dignity and personal safety in her workplace environment. The defendant's conduct represents a textbook example of how wealthy individuals use economic power to systematically dehumanize service workers, Dr. Williams testified. His behavior wasn't spontaneous or isolated. It was calculated to demonstrate dominance and provide entertainment for his business associates at the expense of a vulnerable employee who had no recourse against his abuse. The defense team's attempts to minimize Richard's behavior were undermined by additional evidence that emerged during the investigation, including testimony from other service workers who had experienced similar harassment at Richard's properties and business facilities throughout his career. Hotel housekeepers, restaurant servers, retail employees, and other service workers testified about patterns of abusive behavior that revealed Richard's conduct at the hospital was part of a systematic approach to treating service workers that had characterized his interactions throughout his business career. The jury deliberation lasted only 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all criminal charges, with jurors later explaining that the video evidence and witness testimony had provided overwhelming proof of Richard's criminal behavior and discriminatory conduct. The evidence was clear and disturbing, explained jury foreman David Martinez after the verdict was announced. Mr. Sterling's behavior showed complete disregard for the dignity and rights of working people, and his international broadcast of this harassment made it even more egregious and calculated. The criminal conviction carried a sentence of 4 years in state prison, 5 years of probation, mandatory participation in sensitivity training and anger management programs, and community service requirements that included working with organizations that protected service workers from discrimination and harassment. Parallel to the criminal prosecution, civil attorneys representing Maria and other affected hospital employees prepared comprehensive lawsuits against both Richard personally and his corporate entities, seeking damages for harassment, discrimination, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and violations of employment protection laws. The civil litigation was led by renowned employment attorney Sarah Johnson, who specialized in cases involving workplace harassment and discrimination by wealthy individuals who had traditionally escaped accountability through financial influence and legal manipulation. This case represents an opportunity to establish important legal precedents for protecting service workers from systematic abuse by wealthy customers and employers, Attorney Johnson explained during the press conference announcing the civil lawsuits. Maria Rodriguez and other hospital employees deserve compensation for the harassment they endured, and society deserves accountability that will prevent similar incidents in the future. The civil damages sought included compensation for emotional distress, lost wages, medical expenses for stress-related health problems, and punitive damages designed to deter Richard and his business entities from future discriminatory conduct that harmed service workers and created hostile working environments. The lawsuit also included claims against Richard's corporate entities for creating and maintaining policies that enabled or encouraged discriminatory treatment of service workers, based on evidence from the video conference that showed his business associates encouraging and validating his abusive behavior. Discovery proceedings revealed extensive documentation of Richard's systematic mistreatment of service workers throughout his business empire, including formal complaints that had been suppressed or ignored, witness testimony about similar incidents at his properties, and internal communications that showed awareness of his abusive behavior among corporate leadership. The civil proceedings also exposed the international scope of Richard's discriminatory conduct, with witnesses testifying about similar treatment of service workers at his properties in London, Dubai, and other international locations where local laws provided limited protection for employees who faced harassment from wealthy customers. Corporate documents revealed that Richard's companies had established policies and practices that systematically devalued service workers while protecting wealthy customers from accountability, including confidentiality agreements that prevented employees from reporting abuse and financial settlements that allowed discriminatory behavior to continue without consequences. The civil trial included testimony from employment experts who calculated the broader economic impact of Richard's behavior, including the costs of employee turnover, training replacements, and reduced productivity that resulted from creating hostile working environments throughout his business operations. Dr. Robert Chen, an economist specializing in workplace discrimination, testified that Richard's treatment of service workers created economic inefficiencies and legal liabilities that far exceeded any perceived benefits from intimidating employees into compliance with unreasonable demands. The defendant's management approach created enormous hidden costs through employee turnover, reduced productivity, legal exposure, and reputational damage that ultimately harmed his business operations while causing significant personal harm to individual workers, Dr. Chen explained during his expert testimony. The civil jury returned a verdict awarding Maria and other affected employees $15 million in compensatory and punitive damages, with additional requirements for policy changes throughout Richard's business empire that would protect service workers from future harassment and discrimination. The civil settlement also included funding for service worker protection programs, enhanced training for managers and supervisors, and independent monitoring of employment practices to ensure compliance with anti-discrimination laws and professional standards. The criminal conviction and civil liability transformed Richard's business empire and personal life in ways that extended far beyond financial penalties, to include fundamental changes in corporate culture, management practices, and personal understanding of his responsibilities toward employees and service workers. Richard's companies underwent major restructuring and leadership changes designed to eliminate the discriminatory culture that had enabled his abusive behavior while restoring investor confidence and regulatory compliance throughout his real estate operations and international business ventures. New corporate policies included mandatory respect training for all employees, zero-tolerance enforcement of harassment and discrimination policies, enhanced reporting procedures for inappropriate conduct, and independent oversight of employment practices to ensure compliance with legal requirements and professional standards. The companies also established comprehensive service worker protection programs that provided confidential reporting mechanisms, legal support for employees who experienced harassment, and financial assistance for workers who needed to report abusive behavior without fear of economic retaliation. Board members at Richard's various companies implemented governance changes that included enhanced oversight of executive conduct, accountability measures for leadership behavior, and policies that prioritized employee welfare alongside shareholder interests and business performance. The real estate industry adopted Richard's case as a cautionary example of how discriminatory leadership could create enormous legal and financial liabilities while damaging corporate reputation and business relationships that took decades to build and could be destroyed through individual misconduct. Professional real estate organizations developed new ethical guidelines and training programs that addressed appropriate treatment of service workers and employees, recognizing that industry reputation and legal compliance required accountability for individual behavior that reflected on broader business practices. Manhattan Memorial Hospital used the incident to implement comprehensive reforms in patient management and staff protection protocols that became models for healthcare institutions throughout the country, seeking to balance patient accommodation with employee protection and professional dignity. Dr. Chen's leadership during the crisis established her as a national advocate for healthcare worker protection, leading to speaking engagements, consulting opportunities, and policy development work that influenced industry standards and legal frameworks for protecting service workers from harassment and discrimination. The hospital's enhanced security and monitoring systems became templates for other medical facilities, seeking to protect both patients and staff while ensuring accountability for behavior that might violate professional standards or legal requirements. Maria returned to her cleaning supervisor position with enhanced support from hospital administration and became a national advocate for service worker rights, speaking at conferences and training programs about maintaining professional dignity while resisting workplace harassment and discrimination. Her courage and dignity during Richard's harassment inspired other service workers to report inappropriate behavior and seek legal protection, contributing to broader cultural changes that strengthened accountability for wealthy individuals who had traditionally escaped consequences for discriminatory conduct. The Maria Rodriguez Service Worker Protection Fund was established with proceeds from civil litigation and voluntary contributions, providing legal support, counseling services, and financial assistance for service industry employees who experienced workplace harassment or discrimination from wealthy customers or employers. The fund's programs included legal clinics, advocacy training, and policy development that strengthened protections for vulnerable workers while creating accountability mechanisms that deterred discriminatory behavior from wealthy individuals and business entities. Richard's personal transformation included genuine recognition of the harm his behavior had caused and commitment to supporting organizations that protected service workers from harassment and abuse that he had previously perpetuated throughout his business career. His post-conviction advocacy work included funding for service worker protection programs, speaking engagements where he acknowledged his discriminatory behavior while supporting policy changes that would prevent similar incidents, and consulting with other business leaders about creating respectful workplace cultures. 5 years after the incident that exposed Richard's systematic harassment of service workers, the case continued to influence employment law, corporate governance, and social attitudes about the treatment of vulnerable workers by wealthy individuals and business entities. The legal precedents established through Richard's prosecution and civil litigation strengthened protections for service workers throughout the United States, with multiple states enacting legislation that specifically addressed harassment of service industry employees by wealthy customers and corporate leaders. The Richard Sterling Service Worker Protection Act, enacted in 12 states, created enhanced legal frameworks for protecting service industry employees from harassment and discrimination, while holding wealthy individuals and corporations accountable for behavior that created hostile working environments. Employment law evolved to provide stronger remedies for service workers who faced harassment from wealthy customers, including enhanced penalties for discriminatory conduct, protection for employees who reported abuse, and legal frameworks that held both individuals and corporations accountable for creating or tolerating discriminatory workplace environments. The broader cultural impact included increased awareness about power dynamics in service relationships and the importance of treating all workers with dignity and respect, regardless of their economic status or professional position in social hierarchies. Corporate governance standards throughout multiple industries incorporated lessons from Richard's case, with enhanced accountability measures for executive conduct, stronger policies protecting employee welfare, and recognition that discriminatory leadership created enormous legal and financial liabilities. The international business community, particularly companies with global service operations, implemented comprehensive training and accountability programs that addressed appropriate treatment of service workers and employees across different cultural and legal contexts. Security technology companies expanded development of monitoring and documentation systems that protected both employees and customers by creating clear records of interactions and behavior patterns that could be used for training, quality assurance, and legal protection. The hospitality industry developed new standards for managing wealthy customers who exhibited inappropriate behavior towards service staff. Recognizing that accommodation of abusive conduct created legal liability and reputational damage that exceeded any revenue benefits from problematic clients. Healthcare administration programs began incorporating Richard's case into curricula about patient management, staff protection, and legal compliance that balanced patient accommodation with employee welfare and professional dignity requirements. Maria's advocacy work influenced policy development at the national level, including testimony before congressional committees examining service worker protection and participation in international conferences about employment rights and workplace dignity. Her memoir, Dignity at Work: A Service Worker's Fight for Respect, became a bestseller that inspired service industry employees while educating the public about challenges faced by vulnerable workers who served wealthy customers in various industries. Emma Rodriguez, Maria's eldest daughter, completed law school with support from the Service Worker Protection Fund and began practicing employment law, specializing in cases that protected service industry workers from harassment and discrimination by wealthy customers and corporate leaders. The Rodriguez family's commitment to social justice and worker protection inspired a new generation of advocates who continued the work of strengthening protections and accountability in professional relationships where power imbalances could be exploited for personal entertainment or business advantage. Richard's continued support for service worker protection programs, while not excusing his original conduct, demonstrated the possibility for genuine transformation and positive contribution following accountability for harmful behavior and systematic discrimination. His business entities maintained their commitment to respectful employment practices and worker protection while achieving continued financial success, proving that corporate responsibility and profitability could be achieved simultaneously without exploiting vulnerable workers or creating hostile working environments. The comprehensive documentation provided by security recordings had influenced the development of monitoring and protection technologies that supported both employee safety and customer service quality in healthcare and other service industries, where power imbalances created vulnerability for workers. 10 years after the incident, Maria Rodriguez was recognized with the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her contributions to service worker protection and civil rights advancement, with the ceremony acknowledging her courage in confronting systematic abuse and creating positive change that benefited countless workers. Epilogue: The enduring impact. The story of Maria Rodriguez and Richard Sterling became more than just an individual case of harassment and accountability. It evolved into a powerful example of how individual courage could challenge systematic abuse and create lasting change that protected vulnerable workers while holding powerful individuals accountable for their treatment of others. Maria's refusal to accept degrading treatment and her commitment to professional dignity had inspired thousands of service workers to maintain their self-respect while seeking legal protection from harassment and discrimination, contributing to cultural changes that strengthened accountability for wealthy individuals who had traditionally escaped consequences for discriminatory conduct. Richard's exposure and prosecution demonstrated that wealth and influence could not protect individuals from accountability for criminal behavior, establishing legal precedents that influenced how powerful people were held responsible for their treatment of service workers and employees throughout various industries. The comprehensive reforms implemented in response to their case created lasting protections for service workers, while improving the quality and safety of working conditions in healthcare, hospitality, and other industries where vulnerable employees served wealthy customers who might abuse power relationships. Most importantly, the story reinforced the essential truth that professional dignity and personal respect were fundamental human rights that couldn't be compromised by economic pressure or social hierarchies, and that individual courage could create positive change that benefited entire communities and future generations of workers. Maria Rodriguez had proven that one person's commitment to human dignity and professional integrity could challenge systematic exploitation and create lasting change that protected countless others from similar abuse and discrimination in workplace environments where power imbalances had traditionally enabled wealthy individuals to exploit vulnerable workers. The high-definition exposure of Richard's behavior had created undeniable evidence that private misconduct by powerful individuals could no longer remain hidden, and that accountability was both possible and necessary for protecting vulnerable workers and maintaining professional standards that respected human dignity. Their story continued to inspire service workers, employment advocates, and policymakers who recognized that protecting professional dignity and workplace safety required both individual courage and systematic change that addressed power imbalances while holding all individuals accountable for their treatment of others, regardless of economic status or social position. The lasting legacy included not just legal protections and policy changes, but also cultural transformation that recognize the inherent dignity of all workers and the importance of creating workplace environments where everyone could maintain their self-respect while providing professional services to customers regardless of their wealth or social status. If this story touched you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments what part resonated most with you. Until next time.